Welcome back, trainers. So we're going to be talking about the next Silph Road Arena Cup, as well as the Shiny Shuckle, which is going to be released in Singapore for the Safari Zone. So if you are attending that, have fun out there. Good luck in catching your Shiny Shuckles and maybe a good IV. And for the rest of us, I'm sure Niantic will be releasing that for the rest of the world in due time. So there you go about the Shuckle. That's pretty neat. Now let's move on to the most important thing here, the next arena for the Silph Road. Now we're looking at the Nightmare Cup. Very scary. Now we have a little bit of a twist. As you can tell, there is only 3 types for this one. And no legendaries, no Sableye, and I have a big smile on my face, guys. No Medicham. People were just dying, just waiting to get that Medicham back into the Silph Arena whenever it was announced for the Psychic Cup or another fighting type. But it is going to be disqualified for this round. For Sableye, I'm assuming they're doing that because it is going to have a bit of advantage considering the types that are going to be involved this time around. And then no legendaries, well, that's going to be your Lugias if you were able to trade those and its CP drop below 1500. Personally, I have a shiny one and oh man, unfortunately, I cannot bring it. So about the Medicham, with that Power Up Punch, it's a bit OP considering it's going to be a Psychic and Fighting type. It's going to have a big advantage. So they disqualified it this time around. Very interesting. So let's go over the types here. We have Psychic, which is going to be not very effective to itself, not very effective to Dark, and super effective to Fighting. Then you have Dark type, which is going to be super effective to Psychic, not very effective to itself, and not very effective to Fighting. And then for the Fighting type, going up against Psychic is going to be not very effective, super effective to Dark, and neutral to itself. So this is very interesting, seeing that this is going to be the first cup that we do have only 3 types involved, and as a matter of fact, restricted Pokemon. So that is quite interesting, and I like that going forward. Hopefully we can see that more often. Things that are just going to break the whole meta and make everybody pick him, pretty much like Lucario. Alright, so let's go ahead and go over the types of Pokemon that you may want to start considering powering up and looking into for the Nightmare Cup. Alright, as I was recording this, I'm going to just kind of throw it into the middle of the video here, or towards the beginning. We have Shiny Lapras introduced over there in Singapore for the Safari Zone event. Wow, that's very interesting. So we can look forward to this personally for everybody else in the near future, because that's just the way they do it. They release it for these events and then they kind of release it worldwide slowly afterwards, giving the people who actually went to the event the advantage because, well, they went there. So Shiny Lapras, absolutely fantastic. As you can see the image here, looking great, purple. Alright, so I am quite looking forward to catching one of these in the wild. Lapras is a very meta-relevant Pokemon for PvP. When it comes down to raids, it's, you know, it is what it is. It's tanky, doesn't dish out the most damage, but definitely when it comes down to PvP, it is very meta-relevant. So just a little news flash for you there. Shiny Lapras has been released over in Singapore for the Safari Zone event. Alright guys, so I just got word. I already made this video and completely finished it. I'm just throwing this in here. Unfortunately, I'm on a big time crunch, so I'm not going to edit out all the times that I was talking about Mythicals. So I'm just going to let you know now, you cannot use Mythicals. There's no Deoxys defense form, no Mew, no anything like that, no Celebi. So there you go, unfortunately. Now, going down the line here, we have Infernape. Then we have a little Eradicate, and so on here. And let's see. Something that stands out to me as a potential is going to be Alolan Muck, being poison and dark. So that is only going to be weak to ground type Pokemon. And there is going to be something I'm going to point out to you in just a second that does have a ground move, which can help you out. But at the same time, it's going to be weak to Alolan Muck. So going into this cup, personally, you may want to, I mean, Poison Jab is great, okay? But I would personally run Bite because of the reason that I'm about to tell you here. So we have Acid Spray and Dark Pulse. Acid Spray is not going to be a very strong move whatsoever. It's simply going to lower the defense of the Pokemon. So if you go over here, opponent's defense is dropped. All right. So Alolan Muck is something you want to consider. Now let's go ahead and take a look at this one. That is going to be Metagross, which is going to be the part Psychic type, and that's why it's going to be able to participate. So we have Bullet Punch, Meteor Mash, and Earthquake, which will help you to go up against those Alolan Mucks possibly. Now I feel like I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself recommending these Pokemon, but that's what I'm here for. I'm just giving you my suggestions. So Metagross can possibly find some usability, but the meta has not come out yet. We can simply go over to Mightyana, and it does have Fire Fang, which will be super effective towards the Metagross. Play Rough is not very effective. Poison Faking is not very effective towards it. So, I mean, it's not too big of a threat. But as you may know, quick moves can be very devastating. And then we have Sharpedo. Very fragile. Very, very fragile. But with Bite, as well as Crunch, you may be able to put a big dent into your opponent. And then we have Skuntank here. Now, I haven't changed up my moves since the last cup. I do have Poison Jab, Sludge Bomb, and Flamethrower. So, let's see. You may want to switch up the Flamethrower, maybe, for Crunch, because you're going to have Psychics roaming around this whole tournament. So, therefore, you're going to be super effective against them. So this is a little food for thought. This is a fairly good option to go into this cup with as well. And it just may rise to the top of the meta. No, as a matter of fact, it will rise to the top of the meta. And then we have Hitmonchan here, which has served me quite well going into the Great League because it has such a vast move pool. All right, so we do have counter, Fire Punch, and Ice Punch. You will be able to do super effective damage yet again to Metagross. So take note of that. And then if we look at the Alolan Raticate here, it's going to be a Dark and Normal type. The only downfall for this Pokemon is it's going to be extremely weak to fighting moves, because both Dark and Normal are going to be taking super effective damage, making it 2 times weak, or you can say 4 times weak to fighting type moves. But on the flip side, if you were not going up against any specific fighting type Pokemon, or at least with fighting moves, this can serve you quite nicely going up against those Psychic types or anything else in your way. You better look out for that Spiritomb though, because it is going to be part Ghost, resisting those normal attacks. And then we have Blaziken, which is on the top of my list. It's not going to be something you may want to consider, possibly, as the meta progresses and people start finding out what's good. It may just come to the light. Personally, I have counter Brave Bird and Focus Blast. And then, of course, the return of the almighty Lucario with counter Power Punch and Shadow Ball, which will be able to put Metagross to rest quite easy. If they were expecting some sort of Power Punch, they did not shield up. That is definitely going to, I wouldn't say one-shot it at full health, but by the time you counter it until you get to Shadow Ball, it's going to be done for that Metagross there. So Lucario is a definite option for sure. And then if we're looking at Hariyama here, got a nice shiny, which I purchased secondary move back in the day for that specific cup, and I did not end up using it. But that is the nice thing. If you do purchase these secondary moves for these Pokemon, power them up, get them ready for a league, but you end up not using them, that's perfectly fine. At least you have them for another time. So we have counter Heavy Slam and Dynamic Punch on this one here. So if you were to go up against a Psychic type Pokemon, at least you would have Heavy Slam to combat that damage that is not going to be super effective towards it. And then moving along here, Toxicroak, as you may know, was one of the leading competitors for the Twilight Cup, I would suppose. We have counter Sludge Bomb and Mud Bomb, which is pretty good. This Pokemon is fantastic. You do need to worry about the Psychic type Pokemon because you are going to be Poison and Fighting, both of which are going to be very weak to Psychic. So Toxicroak doesn't have the best defense. And as you may remember, going up against Venomoth, if it did have Confusion, it would absolutely lay it to rest immediately. But it's okay. That didn't stop people from using it, and it still made it very valuable to use in that specific cup. Come around for this cup here. Is it going to really help you out? Well, it does have counter. It does have Dynamic Punch, which is going to be super effective to Dark-type Pokemon. Okay, so take note of that. Moving along here, we do have the Alolan Muk, like we went over, which is going to be fantastic, personally, I think. I'm not too sure about the moves that you're going to want to go in with, but in due time, we'll just have to wait and see. But this one as well is on the table. Now, moving on to Exeggutor. Now, at first glance, of course, with Bullet Seed and Seed Bomb, that's absolutely useless for this cup, just about, right? Absolutely. But if you do have a Legacy Confusion, just like that Venomoth, right? This is going to be something you may want to consider, because Confusion is no joke in the Great League, and Exeggutor is an okay Pokemon. It has a bit of bulk to it. Purchase a secondary move will cost you 50,000 Stardust, but it still should show you some sort of usability when it comes down to it. Otherwise, if you do not have a Legacy, I don't know if you're going to really want to use that, okay? And then moving along, we have Honchkrow. I mean, this could take forever going over all of my Pokemon here, okay? So what is this going to be weak to personally in this cup? Well, it is going to be part dark type as well as flying. So the fighting type is going to be neutralized. But using this quite a bit, it is extremely fragile. And going up against a fighting type Pokemon, say somebody bring in a Hitmonchan or was able to get a Machamp into this league, which is very easy to do, by the way, it is going to go down extremely quick. But on the flip side, when you're using these flying type moves against them, is also going to be doing a lot of damage. Now we have Drapion, much like a Alolan Muck, it is only going to be weak to ground type moves, making it extremely valuable. So far the only Pokemon that we've seen here, well, there's two. We have Toxicroak, which has Mud Bomb here, which will be super effective to it, as well as Metagross, okay, with Earthquake. But let's take a look. So Infestation right off the bat, and it can also learn Bite. So both of those quick moves are going to be super effective to your Metagross, so make sure you take note of that. This is another Pokemon you're probably going to start seeing yet again come this Nightmare Cup. And what a fitting Pokemon. I mean, just look at that. If you saw that in real life, that's the stuff made of nightmares right there for you. Look at it. What in the heck is that anyway? Alright, moving along. We have Breloom with Counter Grass Knot Dynamic Punch. Alright, so it's going to be very weak to flying type, so if they did bring in that Honchkrow, you're going down. If they did bring in that Exeggutor with Confusion, you're going down. So just take note of that, because it is going to be weak to Psychic types, and it's a very fragile Pokemon, alright? It's not going to be double weak to Psychic like the other one we just went over, but it's still going to be taking a lot of damage. So do you see what I see here? We have Slowbro. That's right, with Confusion. So if you do not have yourself a Legacy Exeggutor with Confusion, this is going to be a fantastic option, possibly. We just still have to wait for the meta to unfold before us, for people to start going on sites and doing simulators to see what's going to be good, because personally I'm just hopping right in here, taking a look at my Pokemon to see who we have. But Confusion, and it does have several 2-charge bar moves, so it's not looking bad whatsoever. I'm almost tempted to just purchase secondary move right now here. Let me power this up. Let me see. 1505. Okay. 1470. That's kind of low. That's okay. It does have Confusion, so I'm going to be keeping my eye on that for sure. Then we have Tyranitar. Bite, Crunch, and Fire Blast. And it also can have Smackdown as well as Stone Edge. So if you do have one of those, it's not going to be super beneficial, I don't think, with Smackdown. Bite does not get you too much energy, so that is something to take note of as well. And then we have my Gardevoir here. Now, we have another Confusion. I think this is going to be something I just may want to use. And I'm very close to just hitting that secondary move right now. I really want to do that. 75,000 Stardust, 75 candies. The meta has not unfolded yet, so I'm just contemplating that. We don't need to purchase it quite yet, right? We're not even into the month of May, so there's no need to get ahead of myself here. But this is a Confusion, very useful, something to consider. I do have a Grumpig here with Extrasensory, Psychic, and Shadow Ball. Okay, it's a bit defensive. I have another Slowbro down here. Let's go ahead and see where this is going to land if I power it up. 1586, so that's going to be performing a little bit better than my other one that we have at 1470. Then we have Slowking here with Water Gun, Fire Blast, and Psychic. Okay. Now I'm just going to kind of go over types, because if I go over every single one and tell you my thoughts, we'll be here all night long. All night. All right, so let's move along. We have Umbreon. Okay. Fate's Attack and Dark Pulse. It's going to be very weak to fighting types, but it is fairly tanky. And if you do have one of those last resorts, that is where you're going to want to be at, okay? You don't want to be stuck with just dark moves, okay? Because if you go up against a fighting type Pokemon or another dark type Pokemon, you're not going to be very effective. But if you do have that last resort, you will be able to deal neutral damage. And last resort on the Eevee evolutions are actually pretty good, okay? And moving along here, we do have Mr. Mime, another one with Confusion. So this is going to be a Psychic and Fairy type. All right, there we have a little Fairy Axis there. And not only that, we did have that Fairy Axis over with that Gardevoir. Where is that at? Okay, so we'll have Dazzling Gleam if I did purchase secondary move, so those Spiritombs will be able to take super effective damage. That is something you need to look out for. Spiritomb is not the tankiest thing around, but it's still there. Drapion. Hey, I already know who's looking at this. If you're watching, you know who you are. I know you want to use this Pokemon here. So we have not the best movesets around. I do believe it has Confusion. Let me go ahead and use a TM really quick. Yeah, there we go. And was that foolish to use a TM just to see what it has? Not quite. I mean, look at it. It's at 1462. So I'm still going to be able to use this in practice rounds. Definitely do not want Tackle. Ever. No thank you. All right, so Drapion. Potential. Possibly. Deoxys attack form. Do you want to use it? Leave it in the closet, guys. Leave it there. No, you don't want it. Okay, the thing falls like a rock. It just doesn't really perform. We have Starmie, we have Absol, we have Claydol. You cannot use Medicham. We have Hitmonlee. Honestly, I think there's going to be other options that you want to use over that, personally, like Breloom or even a Hitmontop. Okay, counter Dynamic Punch. I do believe Hitmonlee has a multiple charge bar move, though. Okay, so that's something to take note of. And as we go down here, my list is just kind of withering away. Now you do have, let me remove the 1500 really quick. Okay. Now let's take a look at the big boys. You have a Mew. If you were able to have that, and it's not, well, another mythical. I wonder if they didn't get really specific, and they're going to change up the rules. They're going to say legendaries and mythicals, or if they're assuming the mythicals are going to land under the legendary category. In which case, if you have a Mew in the Great League, you're going to be looking great. You have the element of surprise. Nobody knows what you're going to be using unless you practice round, people. They will have no clue what moves you have. So take note of that. Do not purchase a secondary move quite yet if you're thinking about, oh, I'm going to go into this league. I'm going to power it up right now, or not power it up, purchase a secondary move, and get ready. Hold your horses, because we still need another confirmation saying that mythicals are allowed. Okay? And then we have Alakazam. I do have a Legacy. Where is it at? Gleamer. There we go. Unfortunately, I powered it all the way up here for the Great League or Ultra League. Dazzling Gleam, which will be super effective to Dark type. Then you have Shadow Ball, which will be super effective to Psychic types. Then you have Psycho Cut, which will grant you quite a bit of energy to get them up fairly fast. So if you do have one of those legacies, get at me, please. I need to talk to you. I'm just joking. And then, of course, you have Machamp, right? This thing is always a monster. Counter Dynamic Punch, Rock Slide. You can go with Heavy Slam, but Counter Dynamic Punch is what you're going to definitely want. So there is quite a bit of options here. You have Weavile as well. Is that going to show some sort of potential? Well, it's going to be weak to fighting quite a bit, because Dark and Ice are both weak to that. It's not looking too great. Okay, it's definitely going to find some usability. That didn't stop people from using Breloom. Okay, and when it was double weak to Skarmory, although it was just something you almost put on your team to make them think you're using, so that they would pick Skarmory, so you can intentionally counter them. You get the mind games? And as we go down here, there's a lot of Pokemon. So this is looking pretty good for this cup, guys. And also another notable Pokemon, which I did not mention, it's going to be Crawdaunt here. It's going to be part dark, so it will be eligible. Something to take note of. And I'm obviously not going over everything that you could potentially use for this cup. I'm just kind of giving a quick brush up, touch up, see what we can possibly be using, go into a few practice rounds and see how they work out, right? So with that said, trainers, I hope you enjoyed this video, and like usual, if you enjoyed it, please give it a big thumbs up. Always helps me out, and I'll be catching you all later in your nightmares. Take care.